From the Opepco Studios in Oklahoma City, you're watching the Press Row. I'm Jenny Carlson here with Barry Trammell. Time for We Pick and Barry. It's all Big 12. The preseason picks are out, but we're going to give you our preseason picks. Let's get right to it. First of all, Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year. Who you got, Barry?
Well, I like a guy who didn't even finish the season last year, Casey Payhall, the TCU quarterback. An outstanding NFL prospect, the active leader in passing efficiency in college football. But he hadn't kept his nose clean. He was suspended from the team, from school last year, had some drug problems, had a DUI, had to go to rehab. He's brought back in the fold, says he's going to walk the straight and narrow. Gary Patterson believes in him. If Casey Payhall plays and can stay out of trouble, he's the Big 12's best quarterback. I think he'll be the Offensive Player of the Year.
He's an interesting story for sure, but I'm going with the guy that's a little bit more of a known commodity. I'm going to go with Lake Seastrunk, the Baylor running back. He finished the season fantastically a year ago, 6 games, over 1,000 yards. He's talked about being a guy who can win the Heisman Trophy, and I don't think it's far-fetched. I think he's very talented, very good, and they're going to use him extensively. Obviously, one of those teams in the Big 12 breaking in a new quarterback, Baylor is. So when you've got a hand like him, you're going to give the ball to him. And I saw him make possibly one of the most amazing plays I've ever seen a year ago. Up the middle against OSU, untouched, long run. He pulls a hammy and still scores, Barry. It was one of the most amazing things I've ever seen. I don't think he wants that kind of highlight again, but it's the kind of thing that reminds you what a talent he is.
And better yet, he's president of his own fan club.
There you go. All right, what about Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year, Barry? Who you got there?
Well, I'm going to stay with the Horned Frogs. What
are you on, Gary Patterson's PR staff here?
He's got a bunch of elite ball players. Jason Verrett, his top cornerback, a wonderful commodity to have in the Big 12. You got to have corner play in this league. TCU has it. TCU, one of the few teams that actually played legitimate defense last season. Devontae Fields, defensive end, excellent player, a good pick as well for this. He's suspended for game 1 though against LSU. Jason Verrett not suspended. He's a big-time cornerback. I think he's the best defensive player in the conference.
I'm going with a defensive lineman who made some big waves last year, and that's Calvin Barnett, the Oklahoma State defensive lineman. Newcomer of the year a year ago, an outstanding season for him as a transferred junior into Stillwater. I think he's going to have a big year in this revamped Oklahoma State defense. They're talking about it being a lot more aggressive. That means cornerbacks covering better, allowing defensive linemen to get more pressure. I think they're going to bring a lot more pressure too, and Calvin Barnett's a guy that was recruited by the SEC, so they know his talent. I think he is that caliber of defensive tackle. I think he's really going to anchor that defense, and I'm looking for big things out of Calvin Barnett. I'm picking him as the Defensive Player of the Year. What about Big 12 Newcomer of the Year, Barry? Who you got there?
Well, I'm going with a Kansas quarterback, Jake Heaps, and frankly, it's going to be difficult to win this award because I don't think Kansas is going to win a game. Mm-hmm. If you go 0-9 in the conference, nobody pays attention. But Jake Heaps was a very solid quarterback at Brigham Young. Started 16 games over 2 seasons, one of the top recruits in the nation when he came out of suburban Seattle. Charlie Weiss tried to get him for Notre Dame. Now Charlie has him at Kansas. Dane Christ was a transfer from Notre Dame quarterback Jayhawks last year, but he was damaged goods, injured, not very good. Jake Heaps is healthy. I think he's a legitimate quarterback. I think he's got a chance to be the Big 12's best quarterback if Payhall stumbles. I think Heaps, Big 12 Newcomer of the Year.
I'm also going to go with Jake Heaps, but this was a tough pick for me. I really considered Charles Sims, the running back out of West Virginia. I ultimately am picking Heaps to win for a lot of the reasons that you just mentioned, Barry, but look out for Sims, a running back at Houston before he transferred to West Virginia. He played for Dana Holgerson's offense there and was really, really productive, like we saw some of those Oklahoma State running backs become productive in this run and gun, like a Joe Randall have a good amount of yards. Charles Sims was really good at Houston when they ran that up-tempo under Holgerson, so I wouldn't be surprised to see him have a bunch of yards, but it will be interesting to see with Heaps. If he performs well, is an Ofer team going to be able to get that Newcomer of the Year? I think that'll be a real test for him. All right, Barry, what about this? Big 12 Coach of the Year. Who you got in this category?
Well, I'm going to go with Mike Gundy because I'm picking the Cowboys to win. And frankly, generally we give the Coach of the Year to the surprise team of the conference. When I did my picks in the Big 12, I didn't have anybody inordinate, out of space, out of line. I didn't have anybody with a big jump. I wasn't picking Kansas State to finish second or something. I was pretty much along the company line. So if that's the case, I got to pick the team that I picked to win it. So I'm going with Mike Gundy.
Well, I am going to go with Bill Snyder on this. I don't think the Wildcats are going to be fantastic this year. I think where they got picked to finish in the conference in that 4th, 5th, 6th range is about right. But they always seem to surprise, and that a lot of that has to do with Bill Snyder and their ability to take guys and coach them up and get them in the right schemes. And so I'm just gonna say that we got it wrong again as the media in our picks, and that the Wildcats are gonna surprise. So I'm gonna go with Snyder. Wouldn't be surprised to see them finish higher than any of us think. All right, lastly, Barry, the big question: Big 12 champion. Who wins this thing?
I've got the Cowboys, and the number one reason, I think OSU, OU, TCU, and even Texas are pretty close. I don't think it'd be surprised if any of those 4 won it. However, the schedule is very advantageous for OSU. The Cowboys have to go to Austin, but they host OU, host TCU, host Baylor, host Kansas State. Of the 5 the 5 best teams other than OSU, they host 4 of them in Stillwater. It's a great scheduling advantage. I think that's going to be to OSU's favor. I think the Cowboys win the Big 12.
Yep, I got the Cowboys winning it too. I think there's just a lot going right for the Cowboys heading into this year. There's going to be a lot of question marks all around the league, but I think one thing you know for sure is that Oklahoma State is going to score a lot of points. It doesn't seem to matter who's calling the plays, who's running the plays. This offense gets results, and I think their defense is going to be better. But I think the offense, quarterback-wise, what you're going to get. If you look at those other teams that are contenders. TCU, will Casey Paul Hall be there at the end of the year? OU, what's that going to look like? How is the offensive change going to play out with Blake Bell or whomever starts for them? Texas, David Ash is still David Ash. I mean, there's still a lot of questions about quarterbacks, but OSU, you pretty much know those guys are going to produce. So that's why I got the Cowboys winning the whole thing too. Hey, be sure to stay with the best coverage team anywhere at newsok.com and every day in the Oklahoman.